Deep down in the depths of the World Wide Web lies a parlor of peace, positivity, and a little pinch of enchantment. It's a place where you can kick back and have fun, back to a time when TV was magical. Close your eyes and you'll find your way there. You've made it. Welcome to Tea and Telly. And now that crazy singing Zen priestess cat lady cook, the Willy Wonka to your Charlie, come on in and say hello to Maria.
Well, come on in and say hello, everybody. Don't be shy. It is Maria with Tea and Telly here. Welcome. Welcome on. Thank you. Good to see you here. Hey, guys. How are you? I hope you are not melting. And yes, I know. Stop checking your watch. I was. Anyway, now that I got my breath back, good to see you all. And thanks for waiting patiently for me. And you know, I hate being late, but I'm so glad you waited around. And let me see who's in here. I hope PJ is still here. He's probably like, God, Maria, geez, get it together. But he said hello. And here he is yelling at me. Look at him. Look at him. Look at me yelling at me going, cheese, Maria. But good to see you. Good to see you, PJ, here, saying hello to Kamran, sending out some love to everybody. Peace and love to everybody, and doing the hand clap thing and tapping his toes, and Snetter saying hi to everybody. Miss Alicia, my trusted Runch, saying hi to everybody, to us all, and Dr. O here saying hi, and Miss Connie here. Hey there, good to see you. Joshua, thank you for being here, and hey there. Dia, thank you for showing up here. And Adega, my other awesome wrench, the golden wrench, Adega Outlaw, thanks for being here and saying hello. And I got my two wrenches here. You guys are awesome. Thanks for showing up. And I have a little announcement here. Since I'm late, I don't want to take too long, but for you guys that are lurking, thanks for being here. I wanted to announce here as I bring everybody on my panel, kind of a big deal. Wanted to share with you, PJ, you're just too funny. God grief. Anyway, so as I bring to my panel backstage, I have Dr. O making Tea and Telly Hardwood Productions here. Look good. Thank you for helping me out back. And bring my co-host on here today, but wanted to let you all know not only is she my co-host, but I have brought her on as she has her own channel, so she's got enough to do, but she has offered to be here as also to be helping Heartwood Productions as my operations manager, as I have so much going on and a new project that we have to announce later on. Nice, awesome project. And I usually am organized, but not that organized because I need help. And who do I trust to help me with that? None other than Netter from Netter's Network. So everybody, congratulate Ms. Netter on the title of Operations Manager for Heartwood Productions here.
It's so important.
Yes, it is important. I'm like, you gotta help me. So thank you so much for taking that position here with me. So
of course, it's an honor.
And thank you so much. And we'll be announcing that later on. Very excited to do so. So Heartwood Productions had a nice little meeting with that, and the boss, PJ, and the rest of the team, like, I need that. So thank you so much. We'll talk about that later because we have so many other things going on right now that we want to discuss with our guest tonight. We've had him here before, and sorry, my cat's doing something in the back. I think he started cooking, and I hear pots and pans. So I don't know what he's going to cook for me tonight. But anyway, let's say hi to. We got some other people still crawling in here to the show here, and Tomo, thank you hello for jumping in here. We've got Gravy. How are you? Thanks. Nice little what's it called there? Like that. Funny. Anyway, let's bring on our guest tonight because we're going to have a great discussion here. Welcome to the stage, Kamran. Everybody.
Hi, it's such a pleasure to be on. And Maria, you and I have been talking about this for a very long time, so I'm incredibly excited for today's session. This is actually the first time that's not second time because I did a video with you at Marilyn Monroe's grave, which is just 20 minutes away from me, and I go there very regularly. Mm-hmm. And I was actually able to do a live video from her tomb, and so I'm glad to be able to do today's session.
Yeah, it is nice. Sometimes I'm doing something, and Kamran says, "Hey, I want to say hi to Marilyn." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, say hello." It's kind of.
I'm often ran whenever I'm there. Just text you that I'm there. Yeah.
Yes, it is nice. It is nice to say hello to her, which is it's a very awesome thing, and we do discuss it a lot. It is something that I've always held near and dear to my heart. I told Kamran it is kind of an interesting thing that she does pop up in my dreams often, sometimes in the distance where she just walks by and says hello. And sometimes we sit and we talk. And so I often do
you remember those conversations? Are they private? I mean, I'd hope someday, because hopefully at some point we're going to talk about some of the psychic stuff that I've gotten completely separate from the factual stuff we're going to discuss. And maybe that's the time to talk about that if you're comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, I do remember the discussions. They are some of them are just little chit chats that she asks how I'm doing. I ask how she's doing. It is kind of interesting. She seems to appear when I tend to need it, which is kind of bizarre. She seems to know when I'm having a hard day, and so she'll just like gently hold my hand and say, "Are you doing okay?" And so it's kind of a nice thing.
And there's been a lot of strange psychic stuff with me and her. Everything we're going to talk about today, but for that led to the facts that we'll talk about today.
Yeah. Blue Harvest. Wow, I haven't seen you in a hot minute. Hello, good to see you. Thanks for saying hi. I can hear your voice in my head. Your accent. Good to see you. PJ. Thanks for the $2 super chat to say hi to Kamran. So good to have Kamran back. It has been a while. And last time we was on, we were talking about Marilyn as well. And we had the beautiful Elon with us to do that. Absolutely. And it was good to have her on there. She is a good Marilyn fan as well. And so let's see. Yeah, please share the stream. So I kind of did it like that.
That's actually your second super chat, Maria.
It is.
PJ did another one just before that.
Thank you. Thanks for see. I told you she's there to keep me in check. Yes. And it was one that Netter's like, please, Maria, you missed the good one. The $2 we love Netter. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, we love Netter. We do. We love Netter. She keeps me in check. Yes. Thank you for that. We do. And please friend him. Thank you very much for that, Tom. Oh, I love that. Yes, long time no see. It has been a while. And yes, she is fixed point in time. You're right. And I know, right?
I think PJ's my biggest fan.
Yeah, I know, right? He probably had a secret talk with her. You need to keep her in check. And Doctor was right. I think there is a fixed point in time, and I kind of wonder, what role she would play now had she still been around. Would she evolved in time? With that, would she have evolved I think we were discussing that like I was talking to you about how that she was beyond brilliant to the point that she played her she kind of, how should I say this politely, with she dumbed herself down because she knew that what she needed to do. She was intelligent enough to know that she had to play dumb
Mhm.
to be successful, you know.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that because that was, I think, the easiest path in front of her to success, and it was the obvious one. I don't think it was the long-term path to success, and I think it led to much of her suffering because she was, as we're going to talk about, a very, very unusually intelligent human being. You know, especially with really limited education, she was remarkably intelligent, and I think, you know. And we'll talk about it because we talk a lot about her husband Jim. Her husband Jim, in his memoir, her first husband, asked that question to himself in the memoirs, like, you know, what would have happened had she lived for her professionally? And, you know, he believed she was trying in the final years to get to that place where she could have been sort of the serious actress, the Betty Davis type, the long-term actress. But the problem is she had become trapped in this persona, and she was aging out of the persona at 36. And, you know, the last movie she did was Misfits, and it bombed. Now it is considered a great classic, but it bombed spectacularly in her lifetime, right? And I think it only became was remembered more fondly now because Clark Gable died right after it. She died right after it. So people remember it differently than it was at the time. So I think she was about to experience a very major career loss because she had been trapped in that persona that wasn't actually her or who she was as a palette as an actress. But we'll get to that.
You know, I have to say, Cameron, I had the honor of reading Cameron's script. And I tell you what, I'm getting emotional now. It was hard. It was hard to read. And the reason it was hard to read was because I related to a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it was also very hard to read because I felt a lot of her pain.
I felt it as I wrote it. I was crying at times when I wrote the script.
It was so hard.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder, at what point was she the happiest? Was she the happiest when she was playing, when she got to be somebody else? Like, was she happiest being the people that she was portraying? Like when she was acting, those actors. Yes,
many actors do escape into another role.
Yes.
And many actors do that. I mean, the best actors, sadly, in my own profession, I work this professionally. I'm a writer, director. The best actors, sadly, there's a correlation where there's a lot of emptiness. The reason they can become other personas is that they have no sense of themselves due to trauma. And that was to her. I mean, we have her notes after she died. We have her personal letters where near her death, she was saying, there's nothing in there's empty. It's sawdust. There's nothing there. Right. And you know, I think she would fill it with these roles. But again, you know, and we'll talk about, I think there were moments that the universe offered her real happiness. I don't know that she was at a place where she could have accepted it or even seen it for what it was. I definitely think she chose a lot of things that were not offering happiness. And that's part of the tragedy, right? But I you know, and even had she accepted things she had been offered, was she able to receive them? And that's a very painful question.
And I have to say that that her husband was very patient man.
Yep.
And was very tried so hard.
I mean, he was a decent guy, and
He was.
I'm a member of the Marilyn Monroe Remembered fan club, which is here in LA. It's over 30 years old, and you know we're going to go to on her death anniversary. They're going to do a special reception at her grave. Right? They do it every year. I go to it every year, and so it's a very special group because it's here in LA. There were a lot of people involved in that group. Sadly, they're all beginning to pass on who knew her personally. Right? Many of them are passing on now because of age, but. He actually invited Jim, her first husband, when Jim was alive. He invited Jim to come speak, and he said, because Jim and we're going to talk about the reason. A lot of I think fans and historians have discounted Jim Dougherty in a way that I think is really wrong and unfair. And so he brought him in, and the fans just fell in love with him, and they said, "This is the most decent man we've ever met. This is an incredibly decent human being," and they fell in love with him, and because he exuded decency. He exuded that normal, humble guy that you would turn to, because he was a police officer. You turn to in a sort of crisis, right? And he saved a lot of lives. He Like James Garner, you know, the actor James Garner, the famous actor. He saved James Garner's life. There was a plot to kidnap James Garner that Jim Doherty stopped because he set up the first SWAT team in world history. He was that good a police officer. He was the best shot in the LAPD. And they asked him to train a special weapons and tactics group that never existed anywhere in the world. He did that. And one of the first things the SWAT team that he led did was they did a raid to stop James Garner from being kidnapped. It was a kidnapping attempt. And they had to send the SWAT in. And so he saved people's lives. And so they read him and they're like, this is a really decent guy. Why does he have this persona as being not a nice husband to her, which isn't true? My script that you read, I really wanted to be honest about it. And the reality is all the sources, including the sources of her closest friends and her half sister, were like, oh, this is a good guy. It just didn't work out between them. But he was a really good human being. And I'm glad you saw that, because one of the things I want to do today is I want to allay that, because I don't think it's fair to her and I don't think it's fair to him. He was also she had a thing for good-looking guys. He was a good-looking guy.
Yeah, she did.
Good-looking Irish dude. But I want to avoid that because I don't think it's fair to either of them. She made her choices. He made his choices. It didn't work. I do believe there was an eternal bond between them. That again is not what people say. People said, she moved on, forgot about him. I don't think that's true. We'll talk about that. But it's not fair to him. He was patient. He tried to make the marriage work in an impossible situation where suddenly his simple housewife is becoming world famous and all the dudes now want her and famous guys are chasing her. And he's just a guy. He's a normal guy. He's like, I don't want to hold back my wife, but I also want a spouse. What's happening here?
Yeah.
That impossible situation they're in.
He tried.
Sorry, Karen, there's a question in the chat. They want to know where she's buried. That would be FKHC 2005, also known as Tim. Wanting to know where she's buried?
Sure, she's in Westwood, which is where UCLA is here in Los Angeles. As you can see, I'm in Santa Monica, so I'm as far west as you're going to get, right? So there's three. So just east of here is Brentwood, which is famous for OJ, right? And which is also where she passed away. Her house is in Brentwood. I go there regularly, at least outside. I can't get in, right? But she passed away in Brentwood, which is a 10-minute drive up this road here. Just go up this road, it'll take you straight to her house, right? 10 minutes up. And then just past that is Westwood, just past the 405 east. And there's a little cemetery that's hidden behind skyscrapers. It's in the middle of this business district here in Westwood, 20 minutes away from where I live. And it's now surrounded by skyscrapers. When she passed, it was a teeny-weeny little cemetery that wasn't, no famous people were there. It was normal people. And her sister demanded that she be buried there because most Hollywood people are buried in very famous cemeteries and in Hollywood, in Burbank and other areas, right? And she's like, no, I don't want my sister buried with any of these people. They destroyed her life. I want her with normal people. So who's buried there are several of her foster mothers who took good care of her, right? And so she's buried near her foster mothers. And that her sister said, no, that's, she had a half sister and was like, no, that's where we're going to bury her. And after that, it became a massive celebrity place because when she was buried there in this normal, average Joe Schmo's tiny cemetery behind a building, everyone wanted to be buried there. So when you go there, Farrah Fawcett is buried there. Natalie Wood is buried there. There's hundreds of celebrities buried there in this teeny family, plot because she's there, and that's her power, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. I was going to say, he even at the beginning, he tried. He was trying so hard to protect her, for people to show respect, for her, to not turn her into some like sex pot, so to say.
There's an incident that was recounted by his sister in an article that actually got him into a lot of trouble because after they separated, she went on to become world famous. And then, he has rules like, I'm not going to talk to the press. I'm going to give her privacy, and let her move on with her life. And that's incredibly dignified, right? Because the press was like, yeah, you were married, you random police officer, you're married to Marilyn Monroe. It's like, yeah, I'm not talking to you. Yeah, but his sister decided to talk to the press in 1952, right at the height of her fame, and one of the things she said in there was that Jim, after their divorce, maybe a couple of years later, when she's like beginning a little bit of success. Like it took her 6 years before she made it. Took 6 years of not a great journey in Hollywood, some really terrible stuff, right? But she it took 6 years, 6-7 years almost. But in a couple of years into it, she's beginning to at least get a little bit of work, and so he was happy to be sent by the LAPD to go do security at like one of the studio lots. And she happened to be there, and he hadn't seen her in a couple of years. Now he's married again, moved on, and she saw him and he was delighted to see her. And after they parted there, one of the studio workers, like somebody working, sort of one of the construction worker types, who's, the wolf whistle guy, right? He starts saying smack because he's a police officer. He's like, hey man, she's got a lovely, what? Because he's just random police officer that was talking to this pretty actress, right? And Jim grabbed him and slammed him to a wall. Now he's already been divorced. She hurt him. She left him. She broke his heart, and he slammed this guy into a wall and said, "You know what? That's my wife. So don't ever talk to her about again like that again." Right? And the guy's like stunned, like, "Your wife? So that says something, right? Even after she left him, he's protecting her as best as he can.
He is. Yeah. I could. You can tell. I mean, in the script that you were reading, even from the very beginning, before she had a chance to discuss. I mean, I don't want to go. Well, I think we should perhaps talk a little bit about her background and how this marriage. Most people don't know about it, and that's on purpose. Like her media machine needed to erase him. He was erased by the studio machine, and she went along with it because I think, I'll be honest with you, I think that even though she's like, well, it was a marriage of convenience, it's done, we're over. I don't think that's true. I think she really did care for him. And then he moved on as she gave him no choice. He's like, all right, you don't want to be with me? I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna move on. He got married. And I think that actually kind of hurt her. I think he married somebody else. And there is a lot of evidence of her jealousy after they divorced, right? And that's one of them. And so, but she erased him. So most people, like in the chat, probably don't know. They've heard that she was married to Joe DiMaggio. They heard Arthur Miller. But this guy, this is the first guy, and in my opinion, the best of the three. Was he a perfect husband? No, but he didn't abuse her. He didn't hit her like Joe did. He didn't mess with her head. I mean, Miller was more dangerous, I think, because Joe was just, he blockhead moron, slapped his wife around. That's bad enough, right? I've never hit anyone, much less a woman in my life. But he was raised that way, and he slapped her around so badly that on many of her photo sheets, you would see she still had bruises. They couldn't cover it, right? I mean, that's bad in and of itself. But then Miller was even worse, in my opinion, because he could be psychologically a Machiavelli. He messed with her, made her feel like garbage, because, he married her to be Marilyn Monroe. And then she's like, well, I like to read literature. He's like, no, I don't want you to be that. I don't want you to be this well-read woman that thinks she can have an intellectual conversation with me. Right? He wants to show her off as a trophy, and then she's having conversations about Sartre at dinner, and he's getting embarrassed. Right? So he starts putting her down. He so messes with her brain, makes her feel like garbage, that when they divorce, like she left DiMaggio in 9 months, and they actually, after like 5 or 6 years, they didn't talk, right? They actually managed a friendship after she left Miller, right? In the final year of her life, she reconnected a friendship, probably a sexual relationship with him. But with Miller, when it was over, 1 month after her divorce with Arthur Miller, she was in a psychiatric hospital, like in straitjacket. Yeah.
That's how badly that guy screwed her up. So whatever faults Jim may have, and I tried to not show him the perfect person in my script, it ain't that. It ain't that. He didn't hit her. He didn't mess with her head. And he did his best in an incredibly crazy situation where one day your wife is like world famous overnight. And every
that was a lot for him to have to take. Yeah. But the thing that she always said was her biggest thing was, I felt safe.
Yes, she did say that. She did acknowledge that.
The biggest thing for her. Yeah. Something that she could not say about a lot of people.
She had 4 years, the only 4 years in her life that she was safe. I mean, so let's get a little bit to her background. So those who don't know it, she was born in 1926, June 1st, 1926. Her father, we now know, was Stanley Gifford, who was like in the film editing business, right? At Consolidated Pictures, and he was a handsome guy. You can see both her parents were very attractive. You can see where she got it from. He was a handsome sort of movie star looking guy, and he was a sleazeball. So he was sleeping with the women in the office, and he slept with her mother. He got her pregnant. Her mother was a film editor. Gladys got her pregnant. And then he abandoned them. He's like, nope, well, I think he did try. He's like, went to his family's, I have got this. I got her pregnant. They're like, oh, she's a loose woman. We don't want her, right? And so he's like, okay. He just cut her off. He knew she was pregnant. He cut her off. Never acknowledged his baby. Marilyn would later call him, find out who he was. She called him. Jim was there when she called him for the first time. And he just said, just talk to my lawyer. I don't know who you are. I don't want to acknowledge you as my. And he hung up on her. And she had to cry in Jim's arms because she was like, she finally found her father. That's what. So his father was a scumbag, right? And and then the mother was, she was a young liberated woman in the 1940s, where it's not that easy to be a young liberated woman. She had been a flapper and a little bit of a party girl, and she got with this guy's thing. And she thought, okay, I got a job. I'm not, I have a real job. I can support my daughter. The problem was she was mentally ill. And she very quickly had a breakdown and spent most of the rest of her life in mental institutions, right? And so poor Norma Jean is only a few years old, where her mother is suddenly in a mental institution. And so she's sent from foster home to foster home. For several years, she's in an orphanage. And I've been to the orphanage, right? It's still there, right? I've seen the window where she looked out at the RKO lot. I mean, it's still there. Her room is still visible. And the window, you can see it looks straight out at the lot today, right? And that was horrific. It messed up her mind. She had no family. And every 3 months, she's in somebody else's house. And it appears that at least one of those houses, she was molested, right? I don't think she was actually raped, because it was actually too dangerous to rape her, because there's physical evidence of that, right? But I think handsy stuff was happening, right? It's horrible, right? And it messed up her mind. And then at the age of 16, her foster parents were like, the latest foster parents were like, sorry, we got to leave the state. So you can't leave the state with us because you're a ward of the state. And so her foster mother, Grace Goddard, who was her mom's friend, they had introduced her to the boy next door, who is this handsome Jim Dougherty, who is, recent high school graduate, very decent guy. He was the boy next door. And, he'd been the big sort of local celebrity because he was like, working class families in Van Nuys. His family had been very poor. They lived in a tent for much of the Depression. He grew up in a tent, if you can believe that. He grew up in a tent, and he grew up in the tent of a Mexican family's backyard. Imagine the social status of 1940s LA when you're living in a tent in a Mexican family's backyard in Van Nuys. That's where they were. But he got out of that. He ended up, becoming like the local high school hero. Like he was the head of the football team. He was the elected student body president. Remember, like Back to the Future stuff, right? You go back to that time. And then he was, and he was an actor. He was acting with his best friend and ex-girlfriend, Jane Russell, who would become her star many years later in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, right? And that's a very famous. That was her before her fame. I mean, you can see she doesn't quite look like Marilyn Monroe. That's who Norma Jean was. Mm-hmm. And then they, he was like, let's be honest here, because nowadays people say, he wasn't good enough for her. He was a nobody. He's like, for her, a girl with no parents, who's seen as an illegitimate child in the 40s, with no home. People don't even know what her last name is because the mom kept changing the last name, right? Yeah. Mortensen Baker kept changing, right?
Yeah.
And total social reject, completely alone, nobody, nothing. And this is like the handsome boy next door who's like the local football jock, and he's a sweet guy. He had a chance to go to UC Santa Barbara. He got a scholarship, a football scholarship, and he turned down going to college because his parents were so broke that he turned down going to college to work in a funeral parlor to take care of them. So that's a decent. And then they're like, she's like, we're about to leave, honey. And, she's turning 16, which is the legal age for marriage at the time in LA, in California. So like, instead of sending you back, she's like, you have two options. You can go back to the orphanage, which she would have committed suicide if she'd gone back to the orphanage. She would have killed herself. It was such a horrific experience. Right? You can go back to the orphanage, or maybe you and Jim kind of like each other, right? You've kind of been going on dates. You kind of like each other. Maybe if you are both into it, maybe you get married. And remember, this is the 1940s. Arranged marriages were normal. My parents in the 60s were an arranged marriage. Parents were like, you like each other? I mean, that's what it was, right? We don't maybe have it commonly today. This was normal. And so she married Jim, and as a result, people say, well, that was just marriage of convenience. Other than that, it was go back to the orphanage. She didn't care about him. This was a catch for her girl like her. She was pretty, but she had nothing for her. This is the local celebrity of Van Nuys. This was like a big catch for her, and he was a decent guy. He's like, well, let's go together. Let's have children together. I'll take care of you. I'm going to go work at the Lockheed factory, and I'm going to provide for you. And what he loved about her, which I believe 100%. He has 2 memoirs. I've read them both. I watched multiple interviews he gave to his death. Right? He died in 2005. They're all consistent, and you can see the integrity in his face. What he loved about her, she's a pretty girl, but this is her when they were married. That's a little note she wrote to him about he's the best husband in the world, right? That was her marriage on June 19th, 1946, right? And And again, that house is nearby. That house is in Westwood, right? I've driven by it. It's still there. See, he said consistently he fell in love with her, not because she was pretty, because she still wasn't the Marilyn Monroe bombshell.
Mm-hmm.
He fell in love with her because she was a bookworm. She was at 16, had hundreds of books in her little room. She wouldn't stop reading. It's like, who is this girl who can talk about like Abraham Lincoln's life to me in historical detail? Like I've never met her smart, And so this is somebody who valued her intelligence. DiMaggio didn't. DiMaggio was a lunkhead. He wasn't. He was dumb. And Miller was threatened. Miller didn't want her to be intelligent. It didn't.
Yeah.
He wanted to be the genius of the family, right? So this girl's brilliant. And so he fell in love with her for her soul, her intellect. The problem was, I fundamentally believe this. I think she never really believed, maybe until too late, that his feelings for her were real because she hated herself so much for all these reasons, like a nobody. And the very things that made her attractive, that she's a bookworm, she's a nerd, she's a geek. She's like a Star Wars geek today, right? That's what she was.
Yes.
Why would handsome football player be into a Star Wars geek? And so she couldn't understand it. She's like, he's only with me because he must feel obligated. He doesn't love me, right? And that's the problem, is that her self-esteem was never good. So even when this is brought to her by the divine saying, this dude's going to be good for you. And I have a belief about, I really do believe that had they been more communicative and she'd been more honest with him when her big break came, he would have nurtured her to success, but a better success than the Marilyn Monroe sex spot. He would have nurtured her towards being Betty Davis, right? And she was 80, and Betty Davis was acting to her 80s, right? And so this is the tragedy. It's presented to her, and she's like, no, this guy can't really love me. He can't really love me, right? Because remember, she's been molested. The only affirmation she's getting is that she's pretty. She's the wolf whistle girl. I call her in the script the oomph girl. That's what the boys in junior high school called her, the oomph girl, right? So there's a photos of her taking a bikini where she's putting all of her, when she started getting a model and she was getting all these covers, right? The only value everyone except for Jim ever gave her was, woo, you're pretty, baby. Woo, wee. Woo, you'll check out. I mean, that's all she ever heard. So why would this guy love her for she likes to read, books? That can't be real.
Yeah. And she didn't have, any parental guidance to be able to have anybody tell her that she was brilliant, that she was good enough, and she was smart enough.
Maria, the worst thing is that foster mother, Grace Goddard, the one that arranged the marriage, right? Grace Goddard was a failed actress herself. She was someone who was living vicariously through Norma Jean. So when she was taking care of her, when Norma Jean's mother, Gladys, is put in a mental hospital, Grace is the first person that takes care of her. And Grace is immediately filling her head at the age of 8 or 9. You're going to be a movie star. This wasn't something this little girl was thinking about. But suddenly it's like she would have her read all the film magazines. She was living vicariously through this child. So she's putting it in her head so that she can be the movie star. So already this isn't she's not developing naturally in this environment as a person.
Yeah. And that's so tragic that she starts out that way. I mean, she almost is just from the beginning of her life already just being just at the beginning, she just had already things against her that she had to fight from the very beginning.
Nothing on her side.
Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, nothing. That's why I'm so sympathetic to Jim, because he really did try. He knew she was screwed up. He knew she was screwed up.
He knew.
I mean, she would have night terrors. He would wake up screaming at night, and he would hold her for like an hour while she's shaking. Right? He knew she screwed up, but he stuck it through. He's like, there's somebody worth saving in this woman.
And that's the thing, is that regardless of everything that she went through, and the tragedy that she and all the things that she went through, she was still a really loving person. Absolutely. And a kind-hearted person, and that she would still help others, like the things that she did for Etta James and stuff like that. That she stood for other people regardless of what tragedy she went through.
Oh no, she was clean heart. So another person that's an interesting person building on this story, Maria, that you just said, right? Is so, and I talked to mention on the script. Jim was partners with now I'm blanking on the great actor Robert Mitchum, right? So in the Lockheed factory, his partner, Jim's partner on the assembly line, was this guy named Robert Mitchum, who would then leave the factory to become an actor and end up becoming one of the great movie stars of classic Hollywood, right? So, and he knew Norma Jean and Jim as like his friends, right? When they were nobodies together, right? And so in River of No Return, 10 years later, he stars. Robert Mitchum is a huge star, and he stars with Marilyn Monroe. And he shared the story in an interview where he said, there's, because it's a movie that's set partly on a river, River No Return, right? And there's a scene in there, very famous scene, where it's supposed to be in a boat, it's being overwhelmed by waves. So that was shot with like on a pier, with the boats connected to the pier, and some guy was standing there hosing them to make it look like they're being hit by waves, right? And I think Robert Mitchum said, and remember, this is late in her career now. She's approaching like her late 20s. She's already been through a lot of suffering. She's been through she had breakups and problems. And he says, she looked and saw that the crewman who was doing the water hosing was shivering. He was so cold, right? And she stopped the production and would not go on until he was taken to the hospital and replaced. Nobody in the crew cared. She said, I'm not doing this. You take care of him first and bring in somebody else who's properly dressed for this weather, and then I will continue the show. That's a real human being. After everything through, she still had that heart.
Exactly. Yeah, she was something else.
Yeah. But she was a human being. So, as we talk about it, there was another side to her. The side that propelled her to fame, the ambition, had a dark side to it. There's a side that could be very completely self-focused and would be ruthless. And if it hurt other people, that is the price, right? And I think a lot of Marilyn fans can't handle that side of her. And because it's tied into what happened to Jim, they don't want to talk about it, right? Because she did hurt Jim. And I think she handled him very poorly and unfairly.
Yeah. Because
that's another side of her persona. She's a human being. I've got that side. I've survived in Hollywood by being a little ruthless at times. I haven't broken up a marriage, but I've walked away from good agents that believed in me, that stood by me for years, because a more famous agent came by and I thought this is the time to make the move. And I remember when I first did that, my agent that I've been with for 5 years cried when I had told him I'm leaving, right? Because he was doing his best. He was getting me work. And I hurt him. And I know I hurt him. And I'm sure he's a professional. He's moved on. But if he has any bad feelings towards me, he's right to have those bad feelings. I acted selfishly. And the funny thing is, that new agent eventually dropped me, and I was back at the level of the that I would have been with my earlier agent. So it's the same thing that happened with Jim. It's like, maybe I should have appreciated this guy, but my ambition more.
Yeah,
that's human.
Yeah. I mean, we're all not perfect, and we're not. We all make mistakes on that, and we learn from it.
Well, the other thing as well is that because she did resist this impulse. She did resist it, but the problem was, it's like Elton John said in Candle in the Wind, they crawled out of the woodwork and whispered into your brain. That's what happened when and I tried to show that in the script. That's what actually happened when she became famous as a model overnight. All of the worst scumbags of Hollywood, who all look prestigious and famous, right, were like, oh, this is our meal ticket. This chick is our meal ticket. And they're all like in her brain, and we're going to make you a movie star, baby. Who is this Jim guy? So the first person that did that was Emmeline Snively. So when she got her first break was she was working in a factory while Jim was away at war, World War II. He was on a ship, and she was working in a factory in Van Nuys, and a photographer was sent by the military to just take pictures of the women working there to like inspire the troops. Look at the girls supporting you, right? And he took. In fact, if we can we'll find the picture where she's holding a propeller. That's the famous photo. That was her first photo that launched her career. If we can bring that up, but the photographer was like, "Ooh, this girl at this factory's she's got some oomph. She's something special." And he introduced her to Emmeline Snively, who was a modeling agent in LA, who then launched her career. She made her into a model. Suddenly, within a few weeks, she went from factory worker to like the #1 cover girl, because her pictures were so remarkable, right? That she became a cover girl overnight. And so they're like, wow, right there's the photo. So that's a famous photo of taken when she was just working at the factory, and the guy just walked by and took the picture. That's a picture that would change her life, right? And then he came back. So who are you, right? So that's her working at the factory. She's working on a drone. She's working on an aerial drone. That was her job. She's, this was the first war that used aerial drones, and so she was constructing one. And so then Emmeline Snively, her modeling agent, gets her all these gigs, right? But the problem is and now historian Lois Banner, who I've met, who's a USC professor, who wrote an incredible book people should read called Marilyn Monroe, the Passion, the Paradox. He told me this directly. I went to her house. We had a long conversation, took a lot of notes, and she told me, look, Snively was running a call girl ring, right? She was running a high-class hooker ring in Hollywood. So suddenly this girl is the best find you can get. She's sweet, she's innocent, she's virginal, she's got the girl next door. Everyone banging her clients will be like, this is it. And so Snively's like, I got to get away from this husband, so I can start making real money, because the real money ain't in the modeling. The real money is selling her to men. That was the real money, right? So this is the first person that crawls out of the woodwork and starts whispering into her, you're going to be the biggest star in the world, baby. Get rid of this guy. This isn't coming from her. This is coming from really bad people. Then there's others. Then these photographers she's going out with, they're like, I want to have sex with her. They felt like that was part of the deal, And so, and then he was a great photographer who captured some of her best photos, Andrew Dedinis. If you pull up a photo, there's a photo of her sitting as Norma Jean in a red sort of cowboy shirt and sitting in some grass. He took that photo. He was an incredible photographer who captured her essence, but he's also a scumbag. She went on a trip with him for 6 weeks while Jim, who's on shore leave, was waiting at home at Christmas. And he's like, baby, I trust you. You want to go with this guy? That's the photo. Like, he did remarkable photos of her, right? That's the innocence that he was drawn to. So photo was taken on that road trip where she went up all the West Coast for a month, all the way up to Oregon with this guy, Andre Dedinis, who was a photographer, Hungarian photographer. And Jim at the time was like, he said, I trust you. Go with this guy. I know you're not going to cheat on me. Well, guess what? The moment they're on the road, Dines is like, forget that guy. Let's get into bed. And he was pressuring her for weeks until finally she gave in. And she had her first extramarital affair while Jim is waiting at home alone for Christmas. And this is very important. In later life, she admitted her extramarital affairs. She admitted them she had affairs while she was with DiMaggio, and she had affairs while she was with Miller. Some of them were very publicized, like Yves Montand during her marriage to her co-star. She was openly having an affair with him that the public was talking about, right, while she was with Miller. To her dying day, she claimed she never slept with Deans. Jim, to his dying day, said Andre Dedinis lied about it because he was bragging. I got her in bed. I nailed her. I got Marilyn Monroe before anybody else did, right? He wrote a book about it. He bragged about it to the point after she died, he wrote a book about what a great lover she was, right? So these are all scumbags, right? She denied it. So we're left with two possibilities. One is she told the truth and, this guy's lying, which is possible. A lot of people lied about sleeping with her. A lot of people to this day show up and say, to this day they're showing up, right? And so that's possible, and that shows she's committed to Jim here, right? That shows she's committed to him in a way that she wasn't committed to Miller and to DiMaggio, right? That's one possibility. The other possibility is she did have an affair with him, and I tend to think that's probably what really did happen. But she denied it. Why? Because she didn't want to hurt this guy. She didn't care if DiMaggio and Miller were hurt. She wanted to hurt them. They'd hurt her. She didn't want to hurt this guy, and also I think she was ashamed of it because if she did sleep with Deans, it wasn't because she liked him. It wasn't because she was attracted to him. She was using him to advance her career, as Snively was telling her. You got to make men happy. Then they're going to advance your career. So this woman is putting this garbage in her head. She decides if that's what happened, she gives in. And then she's really like, am I this kind of girl? Am I want to be this kind of person? So she never admits it. That also says something about her. Either path suggests she had a real feeling for this man, and it wasn't a marriage of convenience because the alleged soulmate. So people say Joe DiMaggio's her soulmate, right? She had no problem cheating on him openly. Like he would show up at her houses trying to kill them, right? I mean, Miller, she flaunted her affairs in public to get back at him for hurting her. And this guy, she's like, no, I'm not going to hurt him. Now I'm going to let the women speak. How do you interpret those things? To me, interprets that there's a relationship there.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that, definitely. Yeah.
Later she did hurt him publicly in the sense that the official press studio narrative is that was a marriage of convenience. She did it only to get out of going to the orphanage, and she didn't. And she would say, as Marilyn Monroe in her press interviews, she would say, "I wish Jim happiness. I wasn't happy in our marriage. I wasn't sad in our marriage. He never hurt me. I was just bored." Not a great ringing endorsement of a marriage. right? But it's also very hurtful to him, who had 4 years that he thought they were madly in love, right? And to say that in the press is very hurtful.
Yeah.
To say that is very hurtful. So she did hurt him, but she didn't take it all the way that she did with the other guys.
Yeah.
And that again is that dark side of her. And I do believe this. I believe she said that because I do believe when she divorced him, there's an incident. I'm going to give you the other incident, the famous hussy incident. And I'm going to get a woman's perspective from both of you.
Okay. Real quick, and before you do that, real quick, I just want to acknowledge something here real quick. Because Kamran Pasha Productions came in here real quick with the $9.99 super chat just to say hi to everybody. So I just wanted to make sure to acknowledge that. And just real quick, I thank everybody in here. We've had up anywhere between like 600 viewers in here. I wanted to make sure to show appreciation for everybody who's come in, enjoying this great discussion. So I wanted to make sure to acknowledge everybody who's bounced in.
And if you are enjoying today's stream, kindly hit that thumbs up and show Maria the love.
Yes, and so we may also have to bring back Kamran for part 2 if we don't get to finish this round this time, because we've had I just wanted to make sure to acknowledge everybody that I didn't get to in this. For those of you, I didn't want you thinking I'm not seeing you, to say hello to those who I didn't get to. For Outlaw Bill, for example, Penny saying hello there. I'm seeing you all. I just didn't get a chance to say hello to everybody in here who is leaving awesome comments, enjoying the discussion here. I wanted to make sure that I'm seeing you and saying hello to Curtis and everybody. I am trying to say hello while we're having a discussion. This is a great conversation. Latino Slant saying hello to everybody as well. And thank you for the book. Thank you so much. I'm happy to have that in my hand. Stephanie and everybody who's been here, you guys are all awesome. And yes, I had to take a moment to do that. So I apologize for interrupting you there, Kamran. I just wanted to make sure to get to everybody. So just to let Kamran know also that I wanted to let you know we may have to have you back here for part 2 on that.
So we could do it again. But I mean, that's why I want to at least, if we have maybe another 15, 20 minutes before we sign off today, I'd like to just actually, because I've got 2 lovely women here, I want to give my 4 reasons why I think she loved Jim, and not just like thank you, it was an arranged marriage, thank you for saving my life, and we're done. I think she loved him to the point that later in life she looked back and said, I care about him. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Like, I think she had feelings for him, real feelings, not like, whatever. I guess I have to be with this guy, right? I don't think that's true. So so I'm going to give you the 4 incidences that I believe prove to me, and I want a woman's perspective. And if you disagree, tell me, because men think differently, right? This is just me interpreting based on human nature. So this is a very humorous incident. It's tragic and humorous. So she divorces him. Again, these people are feeding into her brain. And she gets like Emmeline is quietly sending her on screen tests with studios, and Jim doesn't know. Jim knows she's modeling. He's kind of like, I guess I'm going to be okay with this. I trust you, baby, but it's like a little weird that you're always off for weeks with sleazy guys, but and everyone's catcalling you, and lots of guys on my ship are like, got your picture at home. I mean, it's weirding him out, but he's going with it, right? He doesn't want to hurt her. He's proud. He's got a beautiful wife, right? So he's good with it. But so he knows she's modeling. She doesn't tell him she starts looking for acting jobs. So she hides this from him. Now, this is one of the things that's tragic in the relationship, because this is where the communication breaks down. This, Maria, she had a childhood dream of being an actress. This is all historians agree this. It was fed by Grace Goddard, but she had it, right? She never told him that because, again, it wasn't a realistic dream. She married, she's going to cook, and that's it. She's going to be a nice housewife in Van Nuys. It's okay. So it wasn't realistic. Now it's been realistic out of nowhere, right? Because Emmeline's like, I can get you hooked up at like Columbia. So, but she doesn't tell him. That's a choice. She's writing him every day, and he's getting letters every day until they just stop, right? He had over 200 love letters that she wrote while he was in the service. Sadly, his second wife was so jealous because, he gets married, and the second wife suddenly is being overshadowed by Marilyn Monroe was your first wife. And so second wife couldn't handle it. And they said, this is one of my favorite pictures. This was just a few months before the divorce. I mean, he's in love with her. You can see it in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bond. You can see it in their face, right?
Yeah.
It's a very real photo, right? They're holding hands. It's very real. And so she does. And the second wife, Jim's second wife, was so jealous of being in the shadow of Marilyn Monroe that she forced Jim to destroy all of his love letters. She made him burn them. So that's a loss to historians. It's a loss to the fans, and also the loss because he had 200 letters of her sharing her love. And so people say, she never loved him. Well, what can you say?
Mm-hmm.
There's no proof. We have a couple, like there was a photo that came up earlier of her, of a love letter she sent him that somebody else preserved, right? So we have a few. She wrote to other people, like Grace Goddard said, I'm never going to love anyone more than I love Jim. She's not under no compulsion to say these things. She was under compulsion to say, I don't love him, when the movie studios are like, this is the narrative. We need you to be with Joe DiMaggio. You're a star. This guy's a nobody. You can't love him, right? So that she's under compulsion then. But so she starts, so now she's getting whispered into her brain. Don't tell him about this. He might say no. He wouldn't have said no. He was an actor himself. He had acted with Jane Russell on stage. He wouldn't have said no. But she was saying, he's going to block you, baby. Don't tell him. So she starts doing these secret meetings with the movie studios without telling him. And then she gets a screen test at Fox, and then Fox offers her a contract. But this is the 1940s studio system, right? The contract said she had to be single in order to get a contract, right? And there's also the meeting where they gave her the new name Marilyn Monroe, right? And so now her ambition has kicked in. They've convinced her Jim's never going to support her, so she doesn't even try to get his support. And without any warning, one day he's getting love letters from her. He gets divorce letters out of nowhere. Now, imagine this. You're in the World War II. You've been getting love letters every day. Everyone's jealous of you on the ship because you got the most famous model in America as your wife, and she's clearly dedicated to you. And then one day out of nowhere, you get divorce papers that you don't get any warning of. So he's like, what the hell happened, right? And he waited. He came back home. He confronted her, and she's like, look, I have to do this. He's like, I didn't know you wanted to be an actress. Why didn't you ever tell me? We could have worked it out. And maybe we can still work it out. I mean, you're going to go in with these wolves. They all just want to sleep with you. That's why let's be honest. That's why they didn't want her to be married, right? The studio, because she was going to be put into the studio system. They're all going to sleep with her, which is what happened, right? And so he's like, let me be your husband in this. And because, I mean, the truth is, had she gone back to Fox and said, I'm not divorcing my husband, they have no legal basis to, I mean, it's not written into the contract. You have to, I mean, this is just a sleazy thing they're doing, right? They would have, and she was being pursued. Howard Hughes was pursuing her. Other studios were pursuing her. Fox wasn't going to turn her down, but she's 20 years old. And her advisors are saying, no, baby, this is your only shot. This is your only shot. You got to drop him now, or this window is going to close forever. Tragically, Fox dropped her 6 months after she divorced Jim. I mean, so the contract was for what, right? But so she's, and he's like, he's heartbroken, but he's like, I'm not going to force you to be with me. I mean, I'm not that. DiMaggio tried it. DiMaggio slapped her around. You're not going to leave me, baby. He's like, no, if you don't want to be with me, I mean, he's like, reading his memoir is very painful. I mean, it broke his heart. He's like, but I'm not going to force you to be with me. You want to go? You want to go? And he signed it, right? And so now there's evidence one to me that she loved him. Evidence one. So time goes on. A few weeks go on, and he comes back, and he's like, all right, fine, whatever. I mean, he's crushed. He actually said he was suicidal, and I believe him. He wanted to kill himself. Because imagine this, he's married to what is becoming the most famous model in America, who he believed loved him, and now everyone is mocking him. His shipmates, everybody's like, "Oh, obviously you're a nobody, right? She dropped you, man. She's gonna be with Cary Grant soon, right? You're nothing." Imagine the humiliation he's facing, right? And he wanted to kill himself. He said, "But no, I'm not going to do that." He was a religious Christian. He's like, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to start my life over." And so even though I believe he loved her more than he got married again, I believe he was his number one for the rest of his life. His second wife also believed that. So that's why she made him burn the letters. I mean, he couldn't get over her. He never did, right? To his death, he didn't get over her. You can see it in his interviews in his 80s. You can see the grief on his face. He never got over her. But he's like, she's not giving me a choice. I got to move on. What do I do, right? So he starts dating. And then one day he drives by her apartment to pick up some stuff. They're divorced, as you know. I mean, people leave. There's that whole post-divorce process of like, oh, I still got to get my stuff, right? So he's coming to get some stuff, and he's got this beautiful redhead. Like, he's a handsome guy, right? Yeah. And he's got a beautiful redhead in the car. And this is an incident, and I 100% believe. First of all, the incident's true. In fact, it's in his memoirs, and he never deviated the story, and I believe it, right? he comes by and she sees him with this girl, and she gets angry. She slams the door in his face. He's like, "What's happening?" He's like, "Hey, I got to get my stuff," right? So she opens the door, and she pulls him in, keeps the girl out, slams the door, and then starts screaming at him. And she calls him, "How dare you bring that hussy around here?" The hussy is good, right? I love that word. Hussy. How dare you bring that hussy? Like, in our car, you're driving around in our car with that hussy. Everyone knows she's the bike that everyone in town has ridden on. Sadly, she's going to become the bike that Ron Howard's going to ride on, right? But at the time, she's like, how dare you, right? And he's like, and he said, remember, I was like, what's happening here? You just divorced me. You said you don't love me anymore. Why do you care that can't I have a life now?
Mhm.
Sign that she still loved this guy. Why should she care that he's with someone else, right? And so to me, that's sign number one. What do you ladies think? Do you think that's a fair reading, or is it just her being childish? I don't know.
I think she was just immature.
20 years old.
Think about it. She was 20 years old. What did she really know of life, of the world, of anything? Yeah. And so people took advantage of her. So the more people that got in her head, I think the more confused she was getting. Yep. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I'll do that because I don't know anything else. Yeah. So,
what are my options? Yeah. As far as the people are telling her, this is the only way you got to go. But
exactly.
But to me, I think the very fact that she got jealous, because he said he couldn't understand it. He's like, he really believed. I said he was going to kill himself. He believed she didn't love him. Yeah. And he's like, what? Why do you care? And he said that I always wanted him. Does she still love me?
Yeah, I believe she did love him, but she didn't feel she was allowed to love him. That makes sense.
No, I think because she had low self-esteem and she didn't believe a decent guy like him really could love her, right? I don't.
She also, when you actually don't know what love really is, like you've never really experienced it, because no one really ever does really show you love.
And you didn't even see your parents. Your father just was like, I don't love your mom at all. I don't love you. Get lost.
Yeah. So your whole life, you're being abused by everybody, and you've never really experienced love. When somebody actually does, you're like, what the heck is this? And you don't know how to act. You don't know what to do. So you don't believe it. And you don't you don't know, so I can understand that. Like, she doesn't believe it, but then, so you kind of fight it, and then you don't think you're good enough for it. Like, you don't, you kind of.
She gets into a very sordid life. It's very sordid, and it's really shocking because she is a really innocent, sweet girl, right? Mm-hmm. It's so sordid so fast because these people are like, because when she gets 6 months later, when they drop her from Fox, like, okay, because it was a 7-year contract that's renewed every 6 months. First renewal, they dropped her, right? 6 months later. Now she doesn't have a husband anymore. By that time, Jim had remarried because he was like, I'm going to have a wife and kids. You don't want it with me? I'm going to have it with somebody else. And he got married again. And his wife was already pregnant, right? So he's moved on, even though he's still loving her, but he's like, he believes she doesn't love him. Now she's lost her husband. She's lost because the contract was actually income, right? That was the money. She was given like $75 a week, which is a lot in 1946. It's a lot of money, right? So she's got that, and she's making modeling money, but all the modeling money is disappearing because she had to buy her own clothes, her makeup, her hairstylist. That was how it was. Nobody was taking care of her. So all of her money was recycled back into being the model, right? And so she was broke. And so guess what starts happening? Emmeline's like, maybe you should go to the club tonight, meet a nice boy. And she starts going to the nightclubs, and there's the gangsters, and there's the producers, and then suddenly the casting guys are like, why don't you come back here, baby? And very quickly she falls into that hole. And it is heartbreaking because she is so innocent.
Yeah.
It is one of Groucho Marx said he had never seen anyone like her. He said she was like this. He called her Little Bo Peep, who wasn't aware how sexual she was. He called her Little Bo Peep. He's like, I've never seen anything like it, right? Where this woman is incredibly sexy and is Little Bo Peep. She's completely unaware of it, right? So, all right. So
and
that's.
then she got, you get like attention from people, and
you feel good about yourself for once.
You do.
Everyone's like, I'm sexy. People want me.
And
I'm not a loser.
Yeah.
And so that's a drug.
And you fall for it like a dummy, and then you get suckered in, then it's too late,
I can sound very judgmental towards her, and maybe because I do identify with Jim's pain. I also lost a girl many years ago that broke my heart in similar ways. She went off for adventure. She didn't, it didn't really work out for her. Thankfully, she's alive, unlike Norma Jean. But it didn't work out the way she thought. But that I have that scar. I think a lot of people have the scar of the relationship that didn't work, where the person thought they could do better and didn't really. So I identify, but. If I was 20 years old and I was in, I'm Pakistani, arranged marriages are going on today. I could have been married at 20 years old by somebody my mom chose. That would have been a good wife, who's making me nice chicken tikka masala, and I'm safe home. I mean, that was hungry. I love that. So maybe that, and then I'm 20 years old, and suddenly someone comes up to me and is like, "Hey, man, you want to be a rock star? You want to join the Rolling Stones, right? You want to replace Mick Jagger? What?" And then suddenly every woman on earth is like, I want to have sex with you. I mean, I'm 20 years old. The reality is I'm be like, sorry, sweet Pakistani girl that my mom really likes. I'm going to go bang all these girls and become a rock star. That's what you're going to do when you're 20, right? You're human. I would have done it. So I can't, I can sound judgmental towards her. She's a human being. I do judge the actions, not the person. I think the actions are a lesson for all of us to learn, maybe not to do these things, but not the human being behind them, right? So that's story number one. The hussy incident to me suggests
we do need to start wrapping up, so let's make this next one quick.
All right, we'll make it very quick then. Okay. The second thing is when, years later when her sister did that interview, and Jim had never talked to the press, and the interview came out that shattered her because the image was all like how she loved Jim and had been a nice housewife. That messed up her image with the studio system and the public. And so she got really angry and she called. It's 1952. She calls Jim while he's working the LAPD and she starts screaming at him. You're letting your family talk to the press. They're making money off me. And she's yelling. He hasn't heard from her in years. Now she's Marilyn Monroe and she's dating Joe DiMaggio. And she's screaming at him and he gets upset. He's like, wait, calm down. I didn't authorize this thing. I didn't know there was an article was going to come out, but what are you yelling at me for? I've never talked about press. And then he says this thing, which he felt really bad about later, or immediately felt bad. He said to her, look, I want you to know, my wife and I, to protect our children, we don't mention you. My daughters don't know you exist. My daughters don't know Daddy was married to Marilyn Monroe. They don't know. That's why the press won't bother them. They don't know anything. And she went totally silent for like a minute. He's like, are you still there? And she comes back and her voice was trembling and she was sad. She said, I understand. And she hung up on him. And that's the last time you ever heard from her. To me, she was really hurt that he had erased her, but then she had erased him. Mm-hmm. So that's a human who cares.
I see it as him protecting his current family from the things that are out there. Yes. It's like, let's say that I was married to somebody famous. I wouldn't want any of my friends to know that I was married to that person, because then they'd be constantly coming to me going, hey, I know you were married to so-and-so. It's like, what favors can you do for me? And that's probably part of what he was probably feeling too. It's like, yeah, I was married to Marilyn Monroe. No, I can't get you her autograph. I can't get you an interview with her. I can't da-da-da-da. It's like, I got to protect my family. So I'm not mentioning her. She doesn't exist for my family.
But she interpreted it, I think, as you've rejected me forever, right? Mm-hmm. And the reality is, I think if she had called him in August 4th, 1962, that she was in trouble, he would have driven to her house right there and taken care of her. I don't have the slightest doubt of it, right? Mm-hmm. And the last, so this is the final thing, and it's very fast. We can wind on this one. To me, this is the final bit of actual proof that she had a connection with him that she would not publicly acknowledge. Mm-hmm. After she divorced him, she kept her name Norma Jean Doherty for the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. That was her legal name. She didn't change her name. She could have gone to Norma Jean Baker. She could have changed 1 second. She divorced him. Very easy change. Legal, sign this piece of paper. You're back to Norma Jean Baker. She kept Norma Jean Doherty. That was her contract name, her bank account name. That was her name. Marilyn. She didn't change her name to Marilyn Monroe until she was 30 years old, and she was with Arthur Miller. She didn't legally change her name. She was Norma Jean Doherty. If you see some of the movies that have been made, there was an HBO movie where they show her as Norma Jean, and Ashley Judd played her as Norma Jean, and then Mira Scavino plays her as Marilyn Monroe. The character in the credits of Ashley Judd is Norma Jean Doherty. She kept his name. She didn't have to do that because that was the only time she had a belonging to someone.
Yeah, that's true.
To me, that's true. So I think we're going to have to do another one, because the second thing I want to do is I've gone to multiple psychics who have done readings that have come with incredible information, and I've done a zodiac chart analysis of both of them that amazingly explains their relationship.
Wow.
and it blows me away. So I would love to do a second one.
We-
If anyone wants the
we need
mystical
to-
occult version of it,
Yeah, we
need-
got to set for part
because
2.
that's another one. That's part 2. So for those of you watching and stuff, we're gonna have a part 2 with that, and that's gonna be an amazing show too. So thank you for all for being here. This was good. It really hit.
and you know what? I think Norma Jean is with us right now, and I absolutely believe that. And that's where we're going to talk more about the psychic connections you and I have had, with her. But I think she's watching this right now, and I think she's okay with us talking about her humanity.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you so much for being here, and Miss Netter, I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. It's like I grew up with Marilyn Monroe, so it's like seeing all the movies and all that, and of course Elton John's song was very popular when I was growing up. So yeah, it's like I didn't know all the history though on her. I just know what she was like as an actress, but I didn't know like her personal life. So this was really interesting to listen to.
And that's why I wanted to do this too, because I think I wanted to kind of convey that it was a little bit more than just her movies and little, pictures of this and that and the other. I wanted to kind of convey this. This is a little sneak peek, guys. Just a little sneak peek. Okay. For the next conversation, just a little sneak peek. So come back for part 2. I'd love to have Kamran back on maybe next month. Another presentation where we dig a little bit deeper, a little bit more personal stuff that people don't often discuss. That's very, that I think it digs a little bit more into her life that we can talk about, so a little bit more about her legacy in a different light. And my heart's still pounding, so very emotional here. Thank you all for joining. Kamran, thank you for joining me and presenting this. I really enjoyed the script.
Thank you. It means a lot to me. You're one of the first people to read it. And when we talk in the next session, one of the strangest experiences I had with the 2 psychics who are good friends of mine, who are famous psychics, who gave me readings, they claimed that she was speaking to them. And then they would describe entire scenes and sequences from my script that they said, she told you to put this in there. And I'm like, yeah, I put that in there, right? It blew me away.
Yeah.
Cool.
And in reading the script, you could almost feel it come through. And I think that's why I don't want to discuss it too much more, but thank you again, guys. I feel such energy. So, guys, thank you to everybody who was here. Please know that I was watching you all as we were having a discussion, and I appreciate you all. I want you to please be good to each other, take care of each other. If you can, I gotta go rescue some cats out now. So until next time, be safe. And I'm trying to find my outro with all these videos I have.
Press the button. You'll find it.
Thank you to my team. And where's my button? All right, guys. Thank you.
Wanna leave this town. I'm saying, whatever if you wanna go.